love these shoes. I bought like 5 or 6 pairs of these shoes, and I was going on the site and I was like, this is so difficult for such a big brand. Like, why? Like, obviously it's not Nike, but it's like pretty big.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is mad how unuser friendly this checkout is.
Welcome to the Real eCommerce podcast, your go-to for straight talk and smart tips from the world of online retail.
What is it now? 16 years ago, you rocking up with your beanie hat and your skateboard,
Yeah,
and here fresh to do design for us.
I know. Yeah,
It's gone quick, hasn't it?
So
16 years.
I'd already been designing. Yeah, that's mad. I'd already been designing since 17, 18. At Clockworks in Ferndown. That's where I met Mike, and then went traveling, and I came back, and he'd started Media Lounge with you,
Yeah.
aka Real, and sort of jumped on board there. And that was 2008, 2009.
Yep.
I want to
2009, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So 16 years at Real.
And you were doing that for Clockworks before. What made you get into design in the first place?
That was more print based, but for the most part, it was because my dad and my cousin were designers, and they kind of. I was at a bit of a loss at that age. You didn't really know what you're doing, and I was just like, "Oh," my dad was basically like, "I think you should do it. You know, you can draw and stuff like that. Like, I think you'd be good at it. Just give it a try. You won't get paid anything. It's just an internship. Just come along and try your hat at it."
The old free family labour.
Pretty much, yeah. So I was 17, 18, did that, and I felt like I picked it up quite quick, actually. I think being surrounded, I never went to college or uni, but having that real world experience of being surrounded by, like, I think it was like 14 like top level designers at the time, all just, I could just pick their brains like throughout the day and just find out all the information I needed was really good. So I felt like I just sort of my progression was quite steep and quite good.
And was it full time?
And I think it was, yeah. I would just get a lift in with my dad. It was full time.
As long as he does.
It pretty much, yeah, it was. But I actually really enjoyed it. It was like such a good environment. It was better than anything I'd done before, because everything I'd done before was more just like your normal jobs where you're just bouncing around from like that teenage job, don't know, just paying, just because I got told to almost, just facilitate skateboarding basically. And then I was in this place and I was like, wow, this is really cool. At first it was a bit weird because now I get it, but you're working with big, especially I was working with some really big brands, and you're handcuffed very much so with like the brand guidelines, what they can and can't do and stuff like that. And that took me a bit of time, because you go into a role like that thinking, oh, this is going to be like super creative. I can just like do some really cool stuff. Maybe I'll draw a bit here and you're just like, no. Slow your roll. Copy that, put it there.
Use this color, use this font.
Sure all the colors right. Yeah, and especially print as well. I remember doing this banner and it was like these really big banners, and I just messed up on the CMYK RGB like thing, and these blue banners came out like bright purple, and I was just like, yeah. Luckily they were cool. They realized like I'm a junior, and at the time, and so that was like quite a fun, quick.
My thing, whenever I saw
experience.
you progress in what you were doing, I'd always compare it against someone who perhaps went to uni. You mentioned sort of uni and college and stuff a second ago. And if you imagine going to uni for like 3-4 years versus having the 3-4 years of experience you did at Clockworks and then with us, your commercial viability as a designer at the end compared to someone coming fresh out of uni, you've been in real world situations, you've worked with real brands, like you said, you know, you've made mistakes and you've learned how to correct them. I just think there's such a difference between someone who's had 3 or 4 years of commercial experience to someone who's had 3 or 4 years at uni.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is like, so firstly, you're dealing, like you said, dealing with real brands, real clients. So sometimes you're client facing and stuff like that, even from like the early days. And so you pick up on like when you're in a meeting, like, actually, what do they want out of it? What are like, what are their pain points are like? What's their direction? What's their North Star? Where do they want to go to and stuff like that? And how you can facilitate that. Secondly, speed. I think obviously I never went to uni, but from what I've been told, like you just get so long to work on each project. So you're just like procrastinating, partying, and just I think a lot of it. I think that's probably why like the drop off in like in uni students is probably a lot higher now because people can get all this access to knowledge just through
Yeah.
the internet, like YouTube and stuff like that. So I think at the time though, it was uni or nothing, and most people had to go to uni. They weren't like I was very fortunate to be able to go into an internship through my dad and cousin, but a lot of people that do go to uni, yeah, they just like you just go down this uni path of like how it works. And we used to go to the uni, didn't we? And almost like talent scout for a position for like for design positions, and you would just see so many people just kind of missing the mark, or like you'd ask them, "Oh, how long have you spent on this?" And they're like, "Oh, we spent months on this." And I'm like, "You got to get this done
You've got
like
like a
real
day.
quick." At the time, it
Yeah.
was those flash days.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that was what that taught me. Yeah, just sort of the real like the client facing side of things, what can and can't be done, the time frames, budget, all this stuff that I don't necessarily know if you experience at uni.
But also, like we were saying before, we were chatting. You're an incredible artist. Pencil, paint, like give you a computer, give you anything to create some art with, and you're super talented. That do you feel like that's had a steer on pushing you into a career that also uses that, or?
I don't know, maybe. I think it allows me to maybe go a little bit outside my wheelhouse sometimes. Like I think it does mean that already you're looking at the world through a different lens. Like if you're drawing and stuff like that, you're always looking at just almost everything as like a potential picture or
Yeah.
drawing. So maybe in that sense, straight away early on, I'm looking around the world and looking at like also branding and logos and like just seeing it through that lens. And then, like I said, when designing, I feel more confident with trying out some other stuff, like I guess materials, like starting to like bring in any sort of drawing or anything like that needed, or
Flames in the
maybe even the
header.
animation side.
Flames in the header.
Flames in the header. Yeah, for the people that are listening, that out of context, that I didn't want to put flames in the header.
But yeah, I mean,
Hey,
if you want to go and
coming
see
up.
like some of Siege's artwork, it is. I've never seen a pencil drawing look like a photo before, and it's just I don't know. It's out of this world
That
to
I
me.
actually don't like, but
It's
yeah,
not. It's not
I
the
know what you
stuff you
mean.
like, is it? That either. It's not your
No,
favorite
I don't
thing.
like that stuff. It feels too. I feel like I'm just have to. Like I do it because it was almost like almost just a practice, like to see how realistic I can make a drawing and stuff like that. But as you're doing it, you feel like I'm turning into a printer here. Like you might as well just
Yeah,
print it
I
at
guess.
that point where you're just like almost working block by block just to get this thing. But yeah, people really like that sort of stuff. But I prefer the more. I've got a few artists that I absolutely love, and where their style is just a lot looser
Yeah.
and just free flowing. And there's like it's abstract. Like there's a painting in there. It's like hyper realistic, but it's really not.
You did my wedding
nonsense
one,
in that
didn't
word.
you? And that's amazing.
Oh
Like
yeah, I
that's
did.
like
Yeah,
from
I
a
really enjoyed that
photo,
one actually.
but it's like an
Yeah,
abstract, but still quite realistic artwork, isn't it? Black and white artwork.
yeah. We'll maybe get Mike to post it in the
Brilliant.
corner somewhere.
But design now, you've got to have like an element of it's a big prominent element now. About UX and user journey and insights like that. And you've
Absolutely.
actually come up with quite a unique way of creating retailer insights, putting them into a video, giving them some design and UX improvements into their user journey. How did you get the UX experience, and where do those insights come from when you're looking at someone's site?
I mean, I guess it's probably like nearly 2 decades of like trial and error, really, isn't it? Along with just being a consumer yourself, you go on these things, but again, looking through the world through a different lens, you're going on these sites as not only a consumer but as a designer, and so it's easy to pick up on like where they've gone wrong, and especially if you're finding it hard as someone that works in e-commerce and stuff like that, then the general public are going to find it 10 times harder.
Sure.
So, because I know roughly where to look or what needs to be filled in, like most people do, but like when you're designing sites all the time. So
we've seen like so many permutations of website styles that it may not be obvious to one person, but because we probably have seen it before, then it becomes more obvious to us. But to the general user, that might be alien.
Exactly. So when I'm finding it hard, that's where these sort of critique videos maybe, but I'm going to try and do a few more where I'm just experiencing a site and it's like, okay, this is finding it really, really difficult. Let's see how you could tweak it. It's only a few little tweaks here and there just to try and get the conversion rate better or whatever, or just make it more seamless, less road bumps. But that's kind of the goal with those. Like I'm not again, I've said it in the videos, I'm not reinventing the wheel, I'm not making it like really perfect or anything.
It's like little mini pain points, isn't it, that you're seeing from a design point of view, but also as a general user as well.
Yeah.
And you started with Gola, wasn't it, the shoes?
Yep.
And that's because you're a customer, right?
I'm literally wearing the shoes right now. I love these shoes. I bought like 5 or 6 pairs of these shoes. And I was going on the site and I was like, this is so difficult for such a big brand. Like why? Like obviously it's not Nike, but it's like pretty big. Yeah. And I was just like, this is mad how unuser friendly this checkout is.
That one was focused on the checkout, but like in the user journey, where do you think the biggest value add is for a UX designer? Like at any particular stage, or
like I would say it is checkout and any like conversion moments along the process. So like obviously basket or product pages and stuff like that. But like most sites do it okay, and especially now that like a lot of it is themed, or you've a lot of built on Shopify where they've had so much money to like put into the research and stuff like that. But like any small tweaks you can do to reduce like the friction throughout the site and just stop people like from just browsing and get them into that funnel and process. So you're just looking to make it as slick as possible. And that's where like data and stuff like that really helps out, because you can understand where your pain points are and things like that, and start curving off those edges.
Well, it's interesting because Shopify always used to have a like closed checkout process. You couldn't edit it from a code point of view. You could do a little bit of styling or something like that. But then recently they've opened up that as a separate SDK, and you can now, customize the checkout quite heavily. So you're not just, they've spent billions and billions on, the process in that checkout, but there may be insights or things that you need to do as a brand more specifically where you can tailor it. The other page we see a lot in data is the add to basket on the product page. So at that point, most people have not added to the basket because you haven't resolved a query, or you haven't put something clear, upfront and clear for them to be able to make a decision. I always think availability, affordability is really important, and deliverability. Like when are they going to get it?
I was about to say,
but yeah, so those two places for me: checkout and product page.
Products, yeah.
And agreed,
yeah.
If there was like a global e-commerce store out there that you could redesign or help them with something to redesign, is there one that you would want to work with and change? And what would you change?
That's a good one. Like, I don't know. Well, to be fair, actually, a big one that springs to mind that's like probably the biggest site in the world is Amazon. It's like, I think from a designer's point of view, that might be an obvious one, because it's just not a really nice looking site. It looks a bit dated and it's all over the place. It has so many things to do. I think if you were to design that, you're opening up a can of worms. I bet that like the amount of variables and things you have to consider designing that site is ginormous. But that would be one that would be quite interesting to do. I mean, to say you've designed Amazon site is quite big, but that's an obvious one because I feel design wise it is lacking in areas. Again, but it serves its function. It's still, it's not doing too bad. I think they're doing all right.
But they split test literally everything. Like everything that's running on their site is pretty much a split test at all times. I can't remember what I was seeing, like a program I was watching, but there's not. I think it was one of the ones on Netflix actually. It was a really interesting program about online shopping, and yeah, the lady who worked there said that every button, every element, every position of everything has been split test at some point, and the winning one has been put forward to help create the page the way it is. Design wise, it's still not great.
There must be method to that madness, because but when you get down to it, when it comes to paying, and the fact that most people are subscribed or do have an account, because obviously once you're in there, like, it is seamless. To go from finding a product to buying it is so quick. And now they've got that trust. If I look for something, I always usually look for it on Amazon first, because I just know that it's going to be delivered next day. It's super easy. I don't have to faff around with all my details and all that stuff. It is literally just buy, go, cool, and 9 times out of 10, it's always fine. So I think they've obviously it's almost like they're really loading up on those pain points we were talking about of the checkout process. They've loaded up on that, and then the front end, it's just as long as they can search and it's reasonable, then
I think something, I can't remember the stat now, but it's well over 40% of shopping searches start on Amazon now. So they're not even going to Google, just straight to Amazon. Have they got it? I'll have it. Just because the process is so slick and frictionless.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think for me at the minute, I've booked a lot of flights, and the BA booking a flight system, even the Ryanair booking the flight system, sometimes I'm not even that bothered about when I'm traveling. I just want to find the cheap flights. But you have to literally scroll day by day by day by day. Oh, that one's a cheap one, and it just it's really counterintuitive if you're shopping in that way. I know some people shop by date. That's fair enough. You've got a holiday, you want to book a certain date. But some people just want to go away when it's most cost effective, but they don't allow for you to search by that. So I would have thought something around that for the Ryanairs and the BAs of this world would be a good way of improving that experience.
Google Flights or Skyscanner?
Yep. Yeah, I've used those.
Because I find Google Flights is really good for pinpointing. They're again, going back to the UX side of things, their UX for pinpointing the cheapest days for flights is really good, and having live variables to the cost is really nice. But then again, you get funneled into the Ryanairs or British Airways of now you have to buy it,
and the price is sometimes different,
and all their stuff is just it fluctuates. It's all over the place,
or they send you to a third party you've never heard of, and you then book the flights with them, and you think, am I going to turn up at the airport and not have a ticket?
Yeah.
And one of the things in terms of design decisions that you make, sometimes you're going to make the right decision, sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision. You said earlier about doing things for brands where you've got things wrong and then you've had to correct it. Have there ever been any counterintuitive design decisions in your career that you've gone a different way to where you thought it was, and what was the kind of outcome of those?
So there's been loads of counterintuitive ones, which I feel like I was just in saying maybe don't do that, and they've been no, digging our heels in, we want to do this, and they've done it. And I mean, at that point, I don't always know the true results after that. But then there are some that because you do this so many times and you want the best conversion and you want the most streamlined process, you have sometimes a pre-built template in your head of how a site could be, which isn't always the best because you need to be open-minded, in which this case is. But that's what you have. And then So, for instance, when we did a site self-portrait,
Mm-hmm.
and their style was like really fashion heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It was like really meta, fashion heavy, like quirky, and I wanted to almost design it in a way that was I did understand it was more e-commercey, but like try and strip it back a bit and go down that route. But they wanted like really meta,
Mm-hmm.
almost like hidden menus. The menu would appear over a video, which you couldn't even see the menu sometimes and stuff like that. It was like, because obviously the video's going like light and dark and the text, it's just text.
Yeah.
It's not like,
I remember it.
yeah, and all this stuff. But sometimes you have to understand that the people that they're catering to, that they have a very specific audience, and they are looking at other sites like that, and they want that feel and vibe from it, and they almost like that's what sort of gives the site its credentials, its like trust factor for them.
Yep.
And so I think what feels very counterintuitive to you is actually kind of leaning into their target audience and what the brand and customer want. So taking a bit of like a risk there and designing it in something that feels somewhat counterintuitive. Yeah,
I guess you were
I'd say
trying to
that
bring
one.
it more into the format of e-commerce, and they wanted to be more in the format of fashion, and but still have the
Yeah,
e-commerce element, didn't they?
yeah, like a quirky brochure sort of thing that you'd pick up
That you could buy
that
from
was
as
on there.
well. And I mean, we didn't actually do any split testing between what they wanted and what we thought, but it would be interesting to see, if you did
Yeah, it
have the
would.
different menus where, because ultimately you have to make a choice whether it's about the design, and in their case, it was more about the look and feel and the style, or is it about the numbers and the sales and the conversion rates and everything else? And I think they
Yeah.
sacrificed that maybe to make it look a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're trying to create, with anything, like a frictionless experience, aren't we? If we reduce friction, then we're going to increase the conversion rate. And it's hard, I guess that's what we're saying. It's hard to create a balance between friction and maybe engagement or design or brand. That must be quite a hard job to do in design.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of like juggling every aspect with every decision you make. So it's not just like that first initial design, but it goes into every single decision you do when making a design. So sometimes it can be quite hard to justify why you've spent so long on a say a button, or say like I'd say two, like a third of the page or a quarter of the page. Why? Because the decision making that goes into it affects everything else. Like it's like a chessboard almost. Like I move this thing, but it affects everything else. So I have to consider that. Is it consistent with the rest of the site? Is it consistent with the rest of their brand? Does it tell like the narrative that we want to tell? Does it like push them down this funnel? Does it what's the hierarchy of the page? Something like we've had people ask like, oh, this is super important, this is super important, oh, make sure you talk about the delivery, make sure you talk about like this offer we're doing, and it's all on the product page. And it's like, by screaming about everything, you're screaming about nothing. Like it all becomes just noise on a page. So understanding, okay, what are the true top hierarchy things that we need to focus on, and sort of whittling it back from that. So everything is like everything requires like a lot of thought, I think, everything you do, because consistency, does it serve a purpose, does it serve the brand, is it getting the customer to where they want to be? So all these decisions go into basically how you should design, I think,
I
anyway.
like the chessboard actually, because it makes me think, if you do change something, even if it's on a page, that could be a site-wide change.
Yeah,
On it could be a secondary font, it could be a like how buttons are done or shaped
exactly.
or whatever. That would change every
Yeah.
button on the website potentially.
is that, oh, can we change this? Can we change that CTA button to red? I'm like, okay, that's not the nicest color for a progressive button, but does that mean that every progressive button now changes to red, or
Exactly.
is it just that one? If the customer is now used to green and now they all of a sudden see a red button, but that's your most important button, but on this page it's like, yeah, but we want it to stand out over all the other things because we've got a bit of green on this page for like it's new in or something, and we want it to stand out over that. Then all of a sudden you've created a chink in the chain for the customer to now like, oh, it's progressive button, red
Yeah.
button. Like, I don't know, that's just one
Yeah. It's
example,
an
but
easy one to
something
think
to
about,
think
though, isn't
about
it?
that. Yeah, so every move you make on the chessboard changes the whole dynamic. So you need to consider that.
And imagine you're you're an e-commerce retailer. You're coming to an agency. It's quite a daunting experience, obviously, to put your cards on the table of what you want. And like you've just said, you don't want them to be too overbearing, like perhaps they were with the big brands you worked at Clockworks, where you don't have any creative freedom. They're coming to you to utilize your 15 years of experience, your skill, your UX design skill. But in the same respect, they can't come with virtually nothing, because otherwise that kind of, if they come with nothing, that's a bit of a red flag for us normally. So what are the do's and don'ts of what to bring to you if a retailer wants to come and sort of get the most out of a design session with you? What should they bring and what should they perhaps not bring?
Okay, so an open mind, I think. Like if they have any like real use data, so they might not be a big brand, but maybe they do have some like analytics like in the back end of their site, like they've got pain points here and there and stuff like that we can start like piggybacking off of, and like the whole just a client comes and goes, yeah, just you want a fresh look, make it pop, is probably not the one. Just like or this is our competitor, just copy that, because it's like you're anchoring yourself to however well they're like, what's the point in that? Like why are we doing this? Like what's the
do you like brand
I think,
guidelines? Brand guidelines give you a steer normally, would you say?
yeah, brand guide. Most people have brand guidelines and everything like that, and I think that's good.
Do you like people coming with like a concrete wireframe of every page, or is that where you kind of say, well, I don't mind that, it's a starting block, but can I evolve it?
I mean, there's two factors. I don't mind it in the sense that if it's like data driven, for instance, and they're like, we know that like, I love all that because I think that's like it's really thought out. You know why it is the way it needs to be. I'm happy to do that for sure. You've taken, if anything, you've taken like some thinking away from me to do, and now I'm now just sort of filling in blocks, so to speak. But if it's not through that, then I think, yeah.
It's just my wireframes you take exception to, then, is it?
As a person,
it's just my wireframes you take exception to.
Yeah.
They don't copy Kurt Geiger anymore, you know.
But that's what I mean. So from that side of point, I don't mind doing it because I think, yeah, it's data driven. It's like there's reason to back it up. I'm on board with that. But on the other side of it, from a selfish design point of view, like obviously I want to design and have like, the stabilizers off and just freewheel it and just have a bit of fun. And this is where like probably more the artistic side of things. Again, it's the proper hyper realistic drawing and the abstract drawing that I prefer doing. It's a bit freer, it's a bit whatever. So when I can get into that design, I get the tunes going, and I'm like, oh, maybe it would be cool here. We'll have that there. Like that's when it's like.
I think some of the best work we've done has come out of when we've said, look, we're going to do you what you want, but then we're going to throw you the curveball, which is another couple of days of your time, but it's you doing that, isn't it?
It's the ask for forgiveness, not permission design that I've grown to love, because it's kind of like, let me just, I know what you want, I'll do that, but let me also just have a bit of fun with it and do what I think would be cool. And, maybe you don't go with it, but maybe there's some ideas or gets you thinking like, oh, that could actually work here. Actually, that's quite a cool idea. We hadn't thought of that. And that's where the whole, let's just copy our nearest competitor falls off, because it's like we're now innovating a lot more and coming up with ideas that neither party has thought of and could actually do great for the company or brand.
And sometimes it's nice to see that, like, some people just go with the left field one straight away. Like, oh, we love that way more. But others have kind of used it as a bit of a hybrid where they've said, look, we love what we've done, but can we introduce 4 or 5 things that you've come up with? And I think it's a really creative way of working, isn't it? Like you say, no restrictions for you, really use the best of all your abilities, and they get something that is a little bit of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything that you get sort of hate to be asked to include or do?
No, I think one of the biggest, it's not hate, but I hate, okay. So I hate it when someone just asks for a change just because, and it's like got no reasoning behind it other than the fact they just want it. And it's like, I can do it, but it really, like, you just feel like a puppet just doing the work sort of thing. I think the only thing, and I wouldn't say it's a hate, but it is from that first initial design and the love you have for it, or the fun you have designing it. Like I said, you've got the tunes going, you're really into it, you're building this, you're like crafting this thing that you think, right, this is the one, this is amazing. So you have a bit of back and forth internally with like tweaks and stuff like that, but then you have that first visual that you send to the client or you send internally, and it's like, this is my vision for this thing. Obviously, throughout the process, that will get changed. So I think it's not a hate, but it's definitely like, what's the word? But like discouraged, maybe. I don't know. Where you have that first vision and it's like you love it, but then as the process goes on, it has internal changes. The client sees it, has their changes, it gets developed. There's like the difference between development and design. Even though we have like some of the best developers, it does change ever so slightly. Then they might make a few changes post development, and then it goes live, and then it's basically like you're sending your baby out into the world, and then they start getting tattoos. They get all sorts, and then you look at the site like a year down the line or whatever, and it's gone from like this first visual you did to like some of the banners they upload, and like how all the stuff that like, okay, I've this is everything you can do to it, like their ability to edit it and stuff like that, and they've just gone like freestyle with it, and it's you look at it and you go,
it's morphed to something that's almost unrecognizable at that point.
It is a little bit, yeah.
But again, that's
send it to rehab
at a point. That's the cutoff, isn't it? Like, it must be hard to see the design get changed and changed. Like you say, you start off with something that you've thrown everything at, it gets approved, but through the process, there are iterations and there are changes, and it takes a little bit of that essence away of what you did in the first place.
Yeah. So I think, again, it comes to understanding the client and potentially what they're after, how they're going to manage the site. I think understanding how they're going to manage the site. Do they have an in-house designer? Perfect. Right. I can be maybe a little bit more creative with the design because I know that it's in good hands. You're going to be able to do these design things for the banner, for the whatever, which requires maybe a little bit more work, but you get a nicer product, as opposed to, we have no one just creative here. It is admin. We are just going to copy images, put it in here. We're going to use Canva and all this other stuff. Then it's like, okay, I need to be a little bit more like strict with my design parameters and give you more of like a less of a sandpit, more of like a box sort of thing.
Is it, are they going to be able to maintain it, isn't it? And that's something that we should begin with the end in mind. Like, how are they going to manage this going forwards? And like you say, if you create really hard to create header graphics that blend and are multiple layers or whatever, then they might not have that skill set to be able to do it going forward.
Yeah, asking the client questions. I mean, you can ask them questions or you can see what they've currently got, but like, why would you design a product page that is filled with beautiful lifestyle images of like, oh, this is your product and it can look like this and this and this. But if they're not going to have the product images and shots for that, why are you filling up half the page with these beautiful images when a smaller carousel and focusing more on like the information side of thing is probably key.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're showing them something they can't have.
Pretty much, yeah.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for having a chat. If you want to go and see some amazing art, what's the Instagram for people to go and have a look at?
I'll caveat this with I haven't done this in a while, and I'm putting it on pause until I get a bit of free time. 2 kids and juggling jobs is tricky, but my Instagram for the art stuff, again, haven't done this in a while, is CJ Smith Artist.
And anything pretty much on our site is all done by you. And if you want to see some of the cool kind of conversion optimization, UX design optimization videos that you've done, I'll get Chris to link a couple of those in the notes of the podcast as well.
Notes,
yeah,
or up here in the corners.
This is where Mike can do all of the withy emojis. Perfect. Thanks, mate, for doing that.
Cool.
Follow the Real eCommerce podcast and visit realagency.co.uk for more e-commerce content like this.